this activity is about trying to help you to analyse the force extension graph for the spring experiment, and I've put the information into an Excel spreadsheet. So all I had to do there was to move the cursor around and to click in the box and write the number, or whatever I wanted to put I can write in those boxes. So I can just click around, or I can use the arrow keys on my keyboard to put those numbers in. And I remembered to label my headings just like a normal table. So I've got my extension, I've remembered the unit, and I've put the force in and remembered the unit again. And to plot a graph of this data, all I need to do is to highlight the data I want to actually plot. So I've clicked and dragged over that area, and then I need to insert a graph. So I go up to the top here and I find the insert tab, and I want to insert. Now the sort of graph, the only graph we're going to use in physics is called a scatter graph in Excel. So I click here and you can see I've got these different options of graphs. I can have just the dots, I can have dots and curvy lines, I can have dots and straight lines, just curves, just straight lines. The one we will always choose will be to have this just scatter with markers. Just sometimes we might want to draw a curve between them, but that's the graph that I'm plotting here. So you can drag the graph around the screen. Just make it a bit smaller so it all fits onto the screen here. And what we're going to do, just tidy it up, and I'll just show you how to make it look like a proper physics graph. So I'm going to delete that bit which says series 1, which is absolutely pointless. What I can see is I've got the extension going along the bottom, which is what I wanted. It goes up to 6, that's probably quite sensible. But I need to make sure I've got some axes on this. This is the most important part. So I go up to the top of the screen and choose the layout tab. And here you can see I've got loads of things to choose. I'm going to put axes titles on here and put the horizontal axis in underneath there. And this I can just start typing or click and type in that box there. So this is going to be my extension in centimetres. So I've just typed that in, and I need to get a vertical axis, so go back up to the axis title, vertical axis, choose the rotated title, and I can start writing in here and just write up there. And this is going to be force, and it's in newtons. And I can hit return, and that will go into the box. So that's my basic graph. I might want to put some grid lines on it so that I can take gradients from it easily by hand. So I would go to the grid lines tab and choose to put in the horizontal grid lines. Normally we'd choose both the major and the minor, so we can be as accurate as possible. Vertical grid lines, major and minor. Now it's looking much more like the sort of graph we would expect to see. If you want to, you can put a title on it, or you can just write a title underneath in a report if you paste this into a report. If I want to put one above the chart, I've just got to watch the chart doesn't get too small. I can, so we could call this force extension graph for a spring. So we'd say what the axes are. So there's force on one axis, and the other axis is extension graph for a spring. And then you can change the fonts and make it a bit tidier. I think that's a bit big really. So if I want to go on here, I can highlight that. If I right click, I can change the font. So what I did, highlighted it, right click, go to the font, and I just maybe want to have that a bit smaller. So can take it down to 14. That's maybe a little bit neater for me. And that's basically my graph. What I can do with it is I can draw a line of best fit. And for this, I won't use that line drawery tool which it had, which drew straight lines between the dots. I want to know what the trend line is. So I will right click on one of the points, And what you can see is I've got the option of adding a trend line. So I right click on the data points. So click outside and other things are coming up. I right click on here and add a trend line. And it's suggesting I put in a linear trend line, which is just fine. And I'll just let it choose the one that it thinks is the best one. And I'm also going to ask it to display the equation on the chart. And I think that's fallen off the screen. Yep, so I had to go down to the bottom of that choice and click on display equation on the chart. So now the equations come up on the chart, and I can't read it very well because of my lines, but I can slide it around wherever I want it to go. This is saying that y equals 1.7626x plus 0.12. Now what we can see is in physics terms this isn't very sensible. It's not telling me anything. That y is actually a force, so I can change that to an f. And the 1.726 business, well, that's a ridiculous degree of accuracy. I can't really be any better than two-figure accuracy on this. If you think about it, you can actually insert a line. So I could insert a shape and just put another line in of my own choosing and think, well, hang on, if I put this line in, well, it couldn't be that far off. So that would be 12 over 6, which would be a gradient of 2. So it's not as much as 2, but you know, it could be up here or certainly around here. The gradient's not very clear. So the gradient is, I've definitely not got much better than 1.8. So probably better to call it a 1.8 here. So it's 1.8, round this off to make it a sensible number of significant figures. Oops. Great thing is the back button. If you press the wrong bit, you can just go backwards and undo the silly thing you just did. So 1.8 and my x is called x in this case, and the intercept again is not significant. That looks like it's going through 0, 0 pretty much. So the equation which I would use to summarize this graph for physics would be that one there, f equals 1.8x. And what I'll also do is delete that line which was just getting in the way. So there's my final graph, and there's my equation for the line.